All right, welcome everybody. Welcome. We're going to get started here in a minute. Thanks for joining tonight's town hall with a variety of organizations working on the North Carolina State Supreme Court race. Thanks for joining us. As you are coming in, there's going to be a lot of you tonight. Over 1,150 of you have joined our call. Or signed up for our call, I should say. We want to know who each and every single one of you are. So as you are coming in, tell us in the chat who you are, why, where you are dialing in from, and why you've decided to join us tonight. Take a moment, let us know who you are in the chat. Tell us where you're coming in, and why you've decided to join us tonight. Doreen Hughes, number one. And if you want to, as you're introducing yourself, oh wow, it's all really coming in now. We got Wendell. I see Mitzi Turner. I see Todd Stiefel. I can't even read. It's coming in way too fast. Can't even see it. Just suffice to know, as you all can see yourselves, that there's a lot of people here tonight. If you want to double check that you are sending your chat message to everyone, as you are in the chat, you'll see that there's like a little blue button that says either hosts and panelists or everyone. If you toggle that to everybody, you'll make sure that everyone sees your message in the chat. As you're coming in and you're introducing yourself and where you're coming from and why you're here tonight, I do want to remind you, you can put comments and all that kind of good stuff in the chat, but if you've got questions, make sure you use the Q&A function. It's in the same spot as the chat, just a couple buttons to the right. So keep comments in the chat and questions in the Q&A. We want to make sure that we answer all the questions that you have. So with so many people who are here tonight, this really helps us do that. Friends, we're going to get started here now because we got a lot to get through and we want to try to keep it to an hour. So thank you so much for how many of you are here tonight from all of North Carolina. There's no way to dice it. This is a scary moment for our state. So to see so many of you joining us on a very cold January night feels really good. So my name is Gino Nuzzolillo. I am the campaigns manager at Common Cause North Carolina. This event tonight is sponsored by Common Cause North Carolina, Emancipate NC, North Carolina for the People, the ACLU of North Carolina, the NAACP, and Democracy North Carolina. I will be facilitating your call tonight, and we are going to be in this next hour talking not only about the latest with this case and the stakes of what this race for the NC Supreme Court means for the future of North Carolina, but we'll also be hearing directly from some of the impacted and challenged voters in this case, of which many of you in the audience are probably among. And we'll also be learning about the next steps that we're going to be taking together. And we're here tonight for those of you who just joined and weren't looking at the news beforehand, but thought, man, I'd really love to spend the night with Gino and all these other folks on a phone call. We're here tonight because Jefferson Griffin, who lost a race for the North Carolina Supreme Court in November 2024, refuses to concede to the person he lost to, Justice Allison Riggs. And instead of accept that loss and take it on the chin, he is seeking to throw out over 60,000 eligible votes to flip his loss. So that's why we're here. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And with that, I want to first start, before we get into the minutia of this case and who Griffin is and how this is happening, I want to turn it over to Don Blagrove of Emancipate North Carolina, because there's three big reasons to care about a state Supreme Court race, which is a little bit more obscure compared to other elections. And so I want Don to level set for us with the reasons why we care about a state Supreme Court race. So Don, can I turn it over to you for a few moments to level set for us?
Yes, and stop me if you need to. Hello, everyone. We are in a very scary time. We are at a moment where it feels like everything that we have fought for, everything that those of us of conscious mind hold dear to, is at stake. That is a big moment, and it feels overwhelming. So tonight, we're just going to talk about one piece of that, right? We're going to talk about the part that we can control. And one of the things that we have strong control over is whether or not voters of North Carolina get to choose who represents them on the highest court of our land. And that in North Carolina is the North Carolina Supreme Court. What we are seeing right now is a blatant, unadulterated attempt to steal an election, to take away from the people the power that you have through our democratic process to elect those folks who represent you. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this. Why does this matter? It matters for several reasons, but the first reason is this. We are talking about the highest court in North Carolina. This is a court that makes so many impactful decisions on the lives of North Carolinians. Just to give you an idea, when Sherry Breesley was the head of this particular court, she issued a declaration during COVID acknowledging systemic and institutional racism within our system. She issued orders for everyone to have DEI training and equity and inclusion training to understand the harms that systemic and institutional racism create. Now, I want you to juxtapose that against who we have right now that's in charge of our North Carolina Supreme Court. This is a person who has said publicly in all of the years that he has practiced, he has never seen race impact the outcome of any court setting. This is a person who does not believe in systemic and institutional racism. And it is imperative that the people that we put on this court are people of integrity and people who are willing to be the gatekeepers that we need them to be. The Supreme Court makes big decisions. It decides who can vote. It decides what our districts look like and if they are fair and constitutional. As it stands right now, this particular court has decided that 65,000 formerly incarcerated and just impacted people do not have the right to vote. And now what they are trying to do is say that another 60,000 people, many of whom are serving in our military, also do not have the right to vote, not because they have not earned it as Americans, not because they are not entitled to legally, but because if those people's vote counts, this election doesn't turn out the way they want it to turn out. So the Supreme Court makes big decisions. We don't want a person or people on the Supreme Court who do not understand what is fair and what is right and who will not follow the rule of law. Number two, if we let them steal this election, this isn't where it will stop. You all, this is a test case, and they are testing us to see what it is that will be our breaking point. We need to make sure that the attempt to steal a Supreme Court seat by erasing 60,000 votes of North Carolinians is where we draw the line. This is our line in the sand. This is our point of no return. And if we do not take the stand, if we do not let them know that this is completely unacceptable and we will not have our democracy trivialized and mocked, this is not where this will end. And we will be talking again. Lastly, this is an insult to voters, to all of us who have been raised to and believe deeply in the democratic process, one vote for one person, and that every single vote counts. What this challenge to this Supreme Court race means and says is that the people of North Carolina don't actually have the right to vote for who they want. They have the right to vote only if who they pick is who is picked by the oligarchs. We say no. We say no. The people that serve in our military, Black people, all people, should have an unobstructed right to choose who represents them in a representative government. No matter what is going on around you, no matter what the headlines say, America is still a democratic government. And if we want to keep it that way, you all, especially here in North Carolina, it is imperative that we pay attention to this race, that we do not allow this election to be stolen, that we do not allow this court or any court to eradicate the votes of 60,000 people simply because they did not vote the way they wanted to see this election turn out. Y'all, nobody wants to be here. Nobody wants to be here. But this is where we are. This is where we are. And it is our time, and this is the moment where we show everyone, not just talk about it, but show, be about it, that our votes matter, that our votes count, that democracy is the law of this land, and that we will have nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. I think it's powerfully stated, and appreciate you leading us off tonight for the stakes here. Friends, keep introducing yourself in the chat. Keep using the Q&A function. I promise you that in the rest of this call tonight, you're not only going to hear from some of those challenged voters, but we're also going to tell you about the action steps we're taking together next. So hold tight. We've got to get through a couple of content pieces first. And the important thing is that we all need to have a good, clear understanding of how this case has proceeded and how we got here. So the folks who are going to give us just a quick overview of the legal case are Ann Webb with Common Cause and Caitlin Kaiser with Democracy North Carolina. But like I said, hold tight. We'll talk about how we can take action together here toward the end of our call. Ann and Caitlin, take it away.
Hi, folks. It's wonderful to see you all here. My name is Ann Webb. I'm the Policy Director with Common Cause North Carolina. And Caitlin and I are here to help answer some big questions like, who is Griffin challenging? Some of you. Why is he doing this? And what's going to happen next? Now, there are a lot of moving pieces, so we're going to try to keep this fairly simple. But I see folks are already putting great questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those now and also during a later Q&A session. So let's just start with how we got here. Well, we voted in November, right? And after multiple careful recounts and election audits, the results of the 2024 state Supreme Court election show that Justice Allison Riggs won by 734 votes over Judge Jefferson Griffin. As folks know, recounts and audits are normal and helpful processes in close elections. They help confirm and boost confidence in the results. Great. Now, candidates filing election protests is pretty normal too. Plenty of candidates identify valid concerns with how election laws in effect at the time of the election were implemented. And that's why we have a process for considering those protests. But what Griffin is trying to do with this mass election protest is not normal. It is extreme. The big difference is that Griffin is saying votes should be tossed because he doesn't like the rules that were in place at the time we voted in November. Regardless of what you think about those rules, it is a huge deal to try to change the requirements to vote after people have voted. So, who is being targeted? Griffin decided to challenge the eligibility of more than 65,000 voters in an attempt to flip the result and steal the election. We know that overall, those voters are disproportionately Black, disproportionately young. We also know that this is a challenge to early and mail-in voters, not election day voters. And we can explain that a little bit more. We had a good question in the Q&A about that. The list shows that the highest number of challenged voters are in Mecklenburg, Wake, and Durham. Makes sense. But interestingly, the highest rate of challenged voters compared to total voter turnout is in Anson, Swain, Tyrrell, Durham, Gates, and Orange counties. So this hits folks all over the state. The largest group of these voters are alleged to be missing identifying information in their voter listing with the Board of Elections. And many of you on this call have been told that you're in this category. This is supposedly because these voters didn't include that information, their driver's license or social security number, on their voter registration form. But these voters complied with the rules that applied when they registered. And many of these voters are learning from their boards of elections. Excuse me. The lights are turning off on me. From their boards of elections that their information is only missing due to clerical errors or other issues, such as having a hyphenated last name. So don't forget that on top of all that, each of you who voted and each of these voters had to show ID at the polls. So to claim that somehow we don't know who these people are is absurd. The next largest group are thousands of overseas voters and military service members who are being challenged, even though they followed all the laws relevant to their voting procedure. Statewide, there are more than 30,000 voters who use the overseas and military voting method that Griffin is challenging, although he handpicked about 5,000 of these voters from 4 heavily Democratic counties to include in his protest. Griffin is not even claiming that these voters themselves did anything wrong. Instead, he's arguing that the State Board of Elections was wrong when it unanimously passed a rule saying these voters were exempt from sending in a copy of their photo ID with their overseas and military ballots. Of course, no one challenged this rule prior to the election. And even more shocking is that Griffin is challenging these voters even though he used this voting method himself in 2019 and 2020. Now, while that was before the voter ID rule was in effect for anyone, it shows just how far Judge Griffin is willing to go to cancel votes so that he can win, even those of his fellow military service members. If all of this makes you wonder, is my vote at risk? We encourage you to check whether you or someone you know is on the list. I know that many of you have already done that, and we appreciate it. And please do let us know if you find out that you're on the list and you'd like to speak out. Now that you know a bit about what Griffin is trying to do, I'm going to pass it over to Caitlin Kaiser, who's going to walk you through what might happen next in this whole situation.
Thanks so much, Anne, and good evening, everyone. As Anne said, my name is Caitlin Kaiser. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the policy director at Democracy North Carolina. So I've seen in the chat about people asking, what about the state court? What about the Fourth Circuit? What about the federal court? And so, as we know, there are various legal cases surrounding this issue, but the main one is Griffin's appeal in our state courts, specifically his appeal of the State Board of Elections decision dismissing his election protest. That happened all the way back in December. Just yesterday, the state Supreme Court ordered that the Wake County Superior Court must quickly hear Griffin's election protest appeal first. This was always the first step. This is where we should have started after the dismissal at the State Board of Elections. Now, we will wait for the Wake County Court to set another schedule for it to hear the case. Whatever this court decides, it could be appealed to the Court of Appeals and then back to the state Supreme Court. You may also hear about oral arguments in federal court in Richmond on Monday. In that case, Griffin and Riggs are arguing about whether this case should be heard by a federal court or a state court. But that, for now, does not stop the Wake County Superior Court from hearing and deciding the case. There is a possibility that the federal court could try to take back that case from the state court. And if that happens, we'll make sure to update everyone once we all know. The court processes will extend at least to the rest of January and even to the beginning of February. So give me some good news. What's the upshot here? Griffin's only imperative is to win. He's produced no evidence of fraud, did not challenge these voters before the election, and only wants to change the rules after he lost. Nothing he's doing is based on principle or conviction. It's based off deception and brutally securing political power. He's challenging only early votes and votes by mail, which are less favorable to him, not election day votes, which are more favorable to him, and has cherry-picked Democratic-leaning counties as places to throw out votes from overseas military voters as well as civilian voters. Those counties are currently Guilford, Forsyth, Buncombe, and Durham. And those are highlighted in his legal arguments. So what are some scenarios we might see play out over the next couple of weeks? The Wake County Superior Court could take several different paths to resolve this fight. And I'm going to list them all. And so they are all on the table as possibilities. The Wake County Court could dismiss Griffin's case as this is too late. The court could also request guidance or clarification from the state Supreme Court. It could order an entirely new election for this single race. It could order certain categories of voters of votes to be thrown out or investigated further. And then finally, it could also order that certain votes must be thrown out unless the voter fixes their registration through a cure process. And I want to reiterate this important part. While it is constitutionally necessary that voters have a right to notice that their vote may be harmed and opportunity to address that harm, it could be difficult for many voters to timely fix this issue. Because this case is now at the trial court level, there is a very good chance we'll see further appeals and potentially even more litigation. Again, Common Cause, Democracy North Carolina, Emancipate NC, and other groups will continue to make sure that you're updated with the most recent information. Now I'm going to turn it back to my friend Gino.
Thanks, Caitlin, and thank you, Anne. You all live in North Carolina, so it should be no surprise that everything is a mess and everything is happening everywhere all at once, which is why we're on this call and which is why we are kind of trying to go through painstakingly what is happening and what we can do next. So as a reminder, keep using the chat for your comments. Make sure you use the Q&A function, which is down below at the bottom, a couple buttons to the right for your questions. And like I said, we're going to close this call not only with answering the dozens of questions that you already shared, but also sharing what we're going to do with each other next. So hold tight. But the next most important part of this call is hearing from voters themselves, voters that are from every part of North Carolina who are challenged by Jefferson Griffin, who did nothing wrong, who showed their voter ID and are being challenged nonetheless. So I want to introduce first our friend Don Baldwin Gibson from Eastern North Carolina, who's going to take a few moments to share her perspective. Don, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Don Baldwin Gibson. I live in Pamlico County in Eastern North Carolina, and I am one of the 60,000 on the Jefferson Griffin list. For more than 3 decades, I've been voting without issue. It's a sacred responsibility that runs deep in my family. My maternal grandfather, Frederick Douglass Fisher, was born in 1891. He served in World War I and passed down a legacy of resiliency and civic duty. He taught his children and his grandchildren that the right to vote is a sacred trust, a gift that countless people fought and sacrificed for. I honor his legacy and that lesson every time I step into a voting booth. Today, as one of the 60,000 individuals on this Jefferson Griffin list, I am standing up to protect not just the vote that I cast in November, but for every vote that is being challenged. This isn't just about partisan politics. I have been an unaffiliated voter for many years. And among the 60,000 on this list, they're Democrats, they're Republicans, they're unaffiliated voters alike. It is about far more profound issues. It's about protecting the foundation of our democracy, the right to vote, and to have that vote counted and protected. We owe it to those who came before us, like my grandfather, and to those who come after us, to stand firm against any attempt to undermine this right. The act of voting is not just a duty, it's an expression of freedom and equality. And I cannot let, nor can any of us, let this moment pass without speaking out, fighting for justice, and ensuring that every vote is heard. This is not just my story. This is our shared responsibility to protect democracy. Together we can and we must defend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Next, I want to introduce all of you to Audrey from North Carolina Asian Americans Together.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Audrey Miggs, and I serve as the Senior Policy and Advocacy Coordinator at North Carolina Asian Americans Together. I'm a lifelong North Carolina resident who was raised in Asheville, studied political science at Davidson College, and now work in Raleigh at an organization that seeks to empower Asian American North Carolinians through civic engagement. I've tabled at countless voter registration drives, lobbied on Capitol Hill for education access bills, and plan to spend the rest of my career dedicated to empowering marginalized communities to drive progressive policy forward. Despite these experiences that have defined my life's work, Jefferson Griffin has the audacity to try and throw away my vote. I'm here today to speak not only on my behalf, but on behalf of the many Asian American voters who Jefferson Griffin is attempting to silence. This year, more Asian Americans voted in North Carolina than ever before. We are incredibly proud of our community's growing voice and the impacts we will continue to have on our state's landscape. And it is critical that we stand up against attempts to undermine our democracy. Last evening, our organization called over 1,400 Asian Americans whose votes had been challenged in this race. We wanted to ensure that they were aware of the situation and know how they can protect their vote in future elections, despite not having done anything wrong in the first place. Jefferson Griffin's attempt to throw out these votes is unfounded, uncalled for, and undemocratic. I'm tired of candidates using my vote as a pawn in their political game. I'm tired of even entertaining these baseless claims. The AAPI community turned out in record numbers for this election. As part of a civic engagement organization whose mission is to help engage Asian Americans in the electoral process, and as part of the AAPI community myself, I am tired of politicians threatening to throw that work away. Leaders don't choose their voters. Voters choose our leaders. And the people of North Carolina chose Justice Allison Riggs as their Associate Supreme Court Justice. It's time for us to come together and say no to this desperate power grab that only serves to undermine our democracy and disenfranchise voters. Regardless of party, ethnicity, or background, each and every one of our voters affected by this shameless power grab deserves to have our voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And all of y'all in the chat, I appreciate y'all showing love to all of our speakers here. Please keep doing so. They're doing really great work speaking out across the state. Next, I want to introduce you to Connor, who joins us, I believe, from Raleigh. Connor, come off mute. It is your time to shine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Connor Addison. I'm a 20-year-old epileptic from Raleigh, North Carolina, and therefore I'm legally unable to obtain a driver's license and things like that. But I am able to be eligible for things like a voter ID with using things like my Social Security. I was sorry, I'm getting a little bit caught up. Let me reread my script. Appointments at the DMV are still to this day nearly impossible to procure. I registered to vote the same day I turned 18 while also registering for the Selective Service at the same time. My Social Security number was included on both of the forms. I even voted in 2022 with 0 issues, and I was extremely proud to do so. Very, very happy to do so. Before the election in 2024, I had gotten my BOE voter ID from the Maine Board of Elections office and voted that exact same day, voted early as well. And I was elated to have done so. To know that my vote is possibly going to be tossed out under the guise of me not having a Social Security number or a driver's license makes me feel like Jefferson Griffin is undermining my own vote as an American. And it's not only infuriating, but unconstitutional and un-American. And it's extremely saddening, but at most it's disappointing to see this happen. Especially after being in here and seeing multiple people in the chat mentioning that they were on the list as well. This isn't just about us up here on the stage speaking out. I'm only one of the people who wasn't able to vote or is getting their vote removed or revoked by chance. And we all need to stand up and fight for our vote back to be able to get our vote to matter. Because if we don't speak, we won't matter. And that's a horrible thing to ever think about. That's all I can think about saying.
Connor, that was perfect. Thank you for joining. And folks, just who were asking in the chat, Connor doesn't have a camera on his PC, but we appreciate being able to hear his voice. We've got a few more folks that we want to hear y'all from. I think there's going to be a lot of Aggie pride in the chat here in a minute. So Alexia, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Alexia Chavis. I am a junior political science student at the illustrious North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro. And I am also one of the 60,000 voters whose vote is being challenged by Judge Griffin. A little bit about me is that I'm a voting rights advocate wholeheartedly. I was previously an intern with Democracy North Carolina. Currently, I serve as vice president of my university's chapter of Black Girls Vote. I help to lead and support different voter education and mobilization efforts on my campus during this election cycle. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw that my name was listed in this lawsuit. And so I wanted to call into question the validity of the evidence that was presented in this lawsuit because as a college student, I update my registration every year because I change my address every year. You know, some years I'm in a dorm, others I'm in an apartment. And so this year I submitted a new registration form. I included my North Carolina driver's license number, and I even waited until I saw that my registration was updated in the State Board of Elections website before I went to go vote early. And I also confirmed my address with the poll worker that was there. So I did everything correctly and I lawfully casted a ballot. But unfortunately, I saw that it was my old registration that was listed in this lawsuit from over a year ago. And it really makes you wonder how many other people are like me that has old, outdated information listed in this lawsuit when I correctly updated my address months ago. And it's also disheartening as an HBCU student and as a young Black voter to see that Black voters are twice as likely to be found on this voter challenge list, and also that voters ages 18 to 24 are also disproportionately represented on this list. Voter suppression is not something that's unfamiliar to HBCUs. I'll at least speak for A&T. We've had many instances where our campus polling site has been attempted to be taken away from us. We've even had people intentionally come on our campus to register students incorrectly to cause problems when they try to cast a ballot. So we deal with a lot of voter suppression already, but we shouldn't have to deal with voter suppression from people that we elect to protect us. We shouldn't have to deal with this kind of behavior from people who are making such important legal decisions on our behalf. And so Judge Griffin's lawsuit is not just frustrating, it's very disappointing. And unfortunately, it's just not surprising. So to my college students who are on this call, and especially my fellow HBCU students, I urge you to please continue using your platforms to take action and demand that Judge Griffin stop his attack on North Carolina voters. Our voices matter, and a lot of us, we casted our ballots correctly, and it should be reflected in doing so. But thank you so much.
Chat's going wild for you, Alexia. Thank you so much. And I know there's one person who agrees wholeheartedly with you. Once again, folks, we're going to hear from two more voters here that we want you to hear from, and then we're going to answer as many of your questions as you can. So we are getting there. But I want you to hear from another student, Rhiannon. Come on through.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhiannon Camarillo, and I'm a current student at Duke University studying public policy. Like thousands of other students across North Carolina, my vote in this past election has been challenged by Jefferson Griffin. And I'm not just a student in North Carolina, I'm also a proud member of the Student Voting Rights Lab at Duke and North Carolina Central University. We're a nonpartisan coalition of students with a simple yet urgent mission to safeguard student voters and reduce the number of provisional ballots cast by them. This election season, I wasn't just voting, I was also advocating. Alongside my team, I dedicated countless hours to mobilizing student voters. We sent texts, emails, distributed infographics, and held conversations, all with one goal: to ensure that young voices across the state were heard. We wanted students to know that their votes mattered and to be empowered by democratic participation. When I left the polls myself this November, I felt very confident. I had taken every precaution to ensure my vote would count and to avoid procedural errors. I had gone even in person to the Durham County Board of Elections months before early voting to submit an updated and accurate voter registration card. I then confirmed my voter registration status online and also voted early to avoid last-minute complications. I cast my ballot, and as someone who's involved in voting rights advocacy, thought I had done everything I could to ensure its validity. But here I am today, facing the reality that my vote has been challenged. Students in North Carolina are 3.4 times more likely to face voter challenges than the general population. And this isn't just a statistic. It's a direct attack on young voices and on the principles of democracy that should really protect us all. I'm here to say, let our votes stand. When I look up at the No Bull I Voted sticker proudly displayed on my wall, I want to know that it represents something real, the power of my voice, the strength of our democracy, and the promise that every vote really does count. Thanks.
Thank you, Rhiannon. And I want to close us hearing from voters with someone who I know is fired up. Elizabeth, take us away and close us out on this part.
Thank you. Hi, y'all. My name is Elizabeth McDonald, and I'm a lifetime resident of North Carolina and a proud citizen who values the privilege of voting in our free elections, just like all of you on this call. I was born and raised in Greenville, North Carolina, attended school in Raleigh, and have lived in Asheville for over 5 years. 2024 was a year of immense hardship for my community and my family. I witnessed firsthand the catastrophic flooding from Hurricane Helene and faced the harrowing challenge of attempting to evacuate Western North Carolina. During this time, I was forced to spend the night with my infant son in the Linville Hospital parking lot when we weren't able to reach safety. Despite the challenges brought by Helene, I made every effort to cast my vote in the 2024 North Carolina Supreme Court election. To learn that my valid vote is now at risk due to Judge Griffin's appeal to have it thrown out is deeply upsetting. The prospect of losing my vote for arbitrary and political reasons is especially painful given the personal and communal trauma we've endured over the past several months. As the communities in Western North Carolina face recovery from the devastating impacts of Hurricane Helene, this appeal diverts crucial resources, time, and attention from the real issues facing the state. This is a matter of personal consequence, not just to me, but to 60,000 other North Carolinians who have done their part to participate in our democracy. Despite Jefferson Griffin's claim that protecting the Constitution is a priority, this protest weakens the integrity of our election process and threatens to disenfranchise thousands of North Carolinian voters. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here, Elizabeth, and you're getting a lot of love in the chat, as are all the rest of you. So before we transition to Q&A, I just want everybody to give one more kind of round of applause and thanks for all of our speakers who are here with you tonight, who took this time to share. It's not easy in front of over 600 some people to do so. So thank you so much to each of you. We are now at the portion where we are going to answer as many questions that you all have shared with us as we can. And the folks who are here on this panel will help to respond to them. The first question we're going to tackle is something that many of you have asked, which is, how can Judge Griffin challenge 60,000 votes and only have it apply to one race, but not all the other races? Spoiler, you're not going to love the answer, but I'm going to turn it over to Ann Webb and Caitlin Kaiser to explain to you how that's happening.
I'm going to kick us off with answering that question. And so I'm speaking from the position of explaining the law. So please feel free to add your frustrations about the law in the chat, use those emojis. But basically, because the state Board of Elections has already certified every other race, but for this one, those votes are protected. And so the State Board of Elections, as well as our state courts, can't undo that certification. We also, I just want to remind everyone too, as Audrey and you heard other people say, is these votes have already been canvassed. There had been a machine recount, and then there was a hand-eye recount. And so again, the 734 votes that Justice Riggs is leading on are all valid and legal. What we are seeing Judge Griffin do is try to change the election rules after the election. And this is a common sense principle. We know that you can't change the rules of the game during the game and once the game has been played. And so Judge Griffin is really grasping at his friends on the North Carolina Supreme Court to do his bidding for him. And so now, though, we are back at the Wake County Superior Court, and we're hopeful that this court is considered a trial court. And so it has to hear facts and apply those facts to the law. And under both state law and federal law, the law is very clear that these over 60,000 voters are all eligible voters. They followed the law. They did what they needed to do. And this really needs to be, this race really needs to be allowed for the state board to be certified. I do want to add in just something that you all may have heard about is the fact that there is another legal proceeding that is happening separately with the National Republican Party trying to renew the statewide challenge of actually throwing out these 60,000 ballots for all races. But again, I think that is even a more extreme request than what Judge Griffin is doing. But because the state board has already certified all statewide elections, but for this race, the North Carolina Supreme Court race, I think many legal scholars and attorneys believe those votes should be safe. Federal courts have already said that it is too late to go back and change the rules. And so we really believe, again, that following state and federal law, these votes should be protected. I also just want to say one other thing, and I'll turn it to Anne or back to Gino, is that we've seen some questions here about, well, what happens if the federal court rules before the state court, or there's a conflict between these two courts? What court has the final say? What law has the final say in this matter? And so you all may be familiar with this legal jargon theory called the Supremacy Clause underneath our federal Constitution. And the Supremacy Clause says that if there is a conflict between state and federal law, the state law takes priority. And so in this situation, if the federal court says that the federal law must apply, then that is really going to be, the end of the day, what our state court must apply. And so, yes, we may see this race of waiting to see what the federal court will do and waiting to see what the state court will do. But at the end of the day, a federal law will take priority over this case. And Gino and Anne, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Wait, Caitlin, this is Dawn. I'm sorry. Because I think I heard you say it wrong. Can you explain the Supremacy Clause one more time? Because I think I heard you say that state law takes priority over.
Oh, no,
federal.
I'm so
And I want people to be very, very clear about what the Supremacy Clause actually does. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dawn, and I apologize for anyone for confusion. So the Supremacy Clause means that federal law will take priority over state law. Okay, sorry about making people, causing any heart attacks. And so at the end of the day, federal law will take priority over state law.
It sounds like we got that fixed in the chat. And basically, to sum this up, I think, Nakia, you put it in the chat very well. We are trying to make it make sense for you. It's bullshit. Sorry for my language, people, but it's like, it doesn't make sense. It's bullshit. We are in uncharted waters. It is extreme. So this isn't business as normal. There's no legal rationale for this and for why some votes would be discounted for some races, not others. Don, I'll give you a quick word, and then Saylor, I'll turn it to you for a few other questions, common questions.
And let me just be clear, you all. Like I said at the top of the hour, we are in very dangerous times. And what we cannot afford to do is believe or rely on the belief that the systems will save us. That is not what is going to happen here. Okay. That is no longer a strategy that will work for us. Right. I'm not saying that we abandon these systems and that we abandon these rules. We do not. But we also need to be thinking about other ways and preparing ourselves for the possible eventuality that this thing goes really left. This isn't about, and be clear, this isn't about fair votes. It isn't about fair elections. This is about a Supreme Court that already is grossly, where progressive-minded judges are already grossly outnumbered. That not being enough. They don't want to just be able to have control. They want all the control. They want all the power. They want every seat, even if that means doing it in deceitful, dishonest, undemocratic ways. Folks, we are at, like Gino said, we are in uncharted water. But here's what I need you to do for sure, because we have a tendency, especially those of us who believe and to hope that shit will work out. Y'all, we cannot do that. We are past that point. We are past that point. We have got to live in the eventuality that they are going to steal this election for no other reason because they are power hungry and they can. They think they can. We've got to show them that we can. Hold that line, y'all. We got to hold that line.
Thanks, Don. And in a few moments, we're going to share with y'all what we can do. So I see that question coming in. I promise you the last 10 minutes, we're going to focus on one big thing we're going to do tonight and then what we are going to continue to do moving forward. Sailor, give us another common question you're seeing so that we can make sure we answer as many questions that we're hearing tonight as well.
Yeah, thanks, Gino. A lot of the questions have been answered in the chat, and they're the ones that have really stuck with people is what pathway through the courts do we have to succeed? Don, I think you were very eloquent in saying the courts will not save us in this regard or may not save us in this regard. A lot of people have been asking, should their votes be tossed out? Is there a legal recourse for them to then go to the courts and go after Jefferson Griffin, to go after whomever has brought these lawsuits? I want to put that question out there, but also some of the big questions in there relate to next steps, Gino, like you were talking about. Specifically, if people are contacting someone to find out why they are on this list, what recourse do they have if their county can't tell them why they're on this list even? So I want to start with the lawyers about the question, do voters who have been tossed, if they are tossed in that worst case scenario, did they have legal recourse? And secondly, I think we should jump to those next steps, Gino, and just talk a little bit about what voters who are on that list are finding that they have problems with their registration can do immediately to fix them. So I'll turn it over to lawyers first.
Hey folks, yeah, I just wanted to jump in and respond to some of those questions from folks who have already identified themselves as being on the list. And we're going to talk about this a little more in just a moment, but I just want to emphasize that we encourage you to reach out to your Board of Elections. And if you have trouble working with your Board of Elections, if they aren't helping you learn more about how this issue with your registration happened, many people are getting cooperative responses from their boards who are helping them understand whether there was a clerical error or a database match error or some other reason why they ended up on this list. But some counties have been less cooperative. And so we are happy to support you. We would love to hear from you and help you figure out how to reach out to your board, talk to the board with you. There are lots of things we can do to provide support if that's the situation that you're in. I also just want to add that at the moment, right, no one's vote has been canceled. Okay, so while these votes are being challenged by Judge Griffin and these lawsuits, no court has said that any vote should be removed from the tally. So up until that point, voters who are directly affected by this are sort of indirectly part of Griffin's lawsuit, but you do have a right to due process. And if a court orders that that your vote is one of a number of votes that is supposed to be removed, they have an obligation under the U.S. Constitution to make sure that you have notice that that's going to happen and an opportunity to fix the issue. And so there will absolutely be opportunities for voters to both defend their vote, but also participate in legal actions to make sure that everybody who's affected can defend their vote. So want to just really encourage folks that if you found yourself on the list, we would love to hear from you if you are interested in participating in any future actions. And that can be a whole range of things, from speaking out at events like this to potentially talking to lawyers who may be engaging in future litigation. So really want to encourage folks to get in touch with our organizations, the folks on this call, and we will make sure you have that contact information. And I'll pass it back to Gina.
Thanks, Anne. Friends, we're getting to the last few minutes, and I know you are anxious to talk about what we are going to do next. So that's what we're going to talk about here. And I'm going to bring my friend Ratrina here to give you a sense of why we are doing this. What we're going to share with you is there's going to be one thing that's maybe going to seem small, but I promise you has a big impact. And then another thing that we are just starting to cook up that will feel big. So there's a number of actions we're going to be able to take together, but we want to explain to you why we are taking this action tonight in the chat. So Ratrina, can you give us the vision for what we're doing now, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, hello. My name is Ratrina Campbell. I'm an organizing manager here at Common Cause. And we're going to talk about what we're going to do next and what we're going to do together, because it's going to take all of us. As Don had already mentioned, we cannot trust the system. We're going to have to trust us and everybody that is on this call tonight, and many more of your family and friends. As we wait for the courts to make their decisions, the single biggest thing we can do is increase our numbers, build our visibility and our voices, and influence the narrative. That's what we're going to have to do across parties, across demographics, and across geographies. And this is exactly what I mean by that. Thousands, if not millions, of North Carolinians still do not know what's happening. Rather than simply relying on the news and media or social media algorithms, we have the power to directly reach our friends and families right now. There is many of you that I know tonight that I seen in the chat are on here because you found out your daughters was on there, your sons was on there. You found out that your friends were on there, your mother was on there, your father was on there. That is why you're on this call tonight, to see what is going on and what you can do. So right there tells me we have to take the time to reach out to our family and friends right now. Also, the more people we who know, the more they can take action. Write letters to the editor, post on social media, contact elected officials, prompt media to write about the case. Right now, we have over 600 people here tonight, including many reporters who came here because you are here and will write stories as a result. We have already heard so many stories tonight about how this has affected voters right here in North Carolina, voters who have been fighting to get to the polls. One of our speakers tonight slept in her car with her baby, but made sure she was able to go vote. So ultimately, the justices on the state Supreme Court are political creatures whose power, in part, rests on the perception that they are legitimate. They are sensitive to public opinion, pressure, and the stories we tell about the court that bleed into the future elections, and it will. Just look at last week. Sensing that his challenge to 60,000 voters was unpopular, Griffin's latest legal filing shifted tactics, instead saying, hey, Supreme Court, just validate the 5,000 overseas voters, and that should be enough to give the election. He did so thinking it would cause less outrage and therefore be easier, but we'll show him that that is definitely not the case. That is definitely not the case. Even conservatives like Andrew Dunn, former advisor to Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, is sounding the alarm about the disaster waiting if the court gives Griffin what he wants. Look at tonight's town hall. Over 600 registrations tonight. More registrations than any town hall we've had in 2024, built by North Carolinians. I am born and raised a North Carolinian myself, fed up, and focused on demanding better. Together, And if you don't believe me, look up how public pressure led to our victory of an arguably more conservative U.S. Supreme Court in 2023, allowing us to win our case in Moore v. Harper and save our state's courts as a check on legislative control. Now's the time the court does its job for our democracy, which is what it should do, because it should be about the people. It's not about them, it's about the people, and the people who go in and vote. That's what it's about. It's about us as North Carolinians. Therefore, we must continue to beat the drum. We can't guarantee that we'll succeed, but we'll get further than if we do nothing. We'll get further if we continue to stay in this together, if we continue to fight this together. And to accomplish all of this, we need to bring more people by spreading the word. And with that, I will pass it back to Gino.
So here's the moment. I'm going to ask you to do something very small right now that's going to feel small. And you may be even a little bit skeptical hearing us, but it's going to make a difference. And then I'm going to tell you about the big thing that we're doing. But here's what I want each of you to do right now. If you are on the call and you are able to do it, I want each of you to go, if you haven't done already, to go to ccnc.me/WeMatter. If you have not already done so, go there and fill out the form and add your name. The reason that's important is because this is how we keep you in touch with what is happening and the updates in the case and the actions that are going to come. If you've already done that, then I want you to choose right now one piece of social media that you have or a texting app of choice. And I want you to make a post or a text right now about the Griffin case. I want you to go on Facebook and make a post and share that link. I want you to go on Twitter, I guess it's X, whatever the hell it's called, and make a post. I want you to go on Nextdoor, which somebody sent me today, and make a post and encourage people to look up whether they are on that list and to fill out the form. You could be on Reddit or Blue Sky. I just want you to post about this event, what you learned tonight, and share it. Make one post right now. And if you want, use the hashtag GriffinSteal. That's GRIFFIN Steal, STEAL. So if you are with us on this, I already see some of you doing that. Say that you're in with us on the chat. And we want you to just post whatever you want. Share what you learned tonight. Maybe it's just like go to this link, or maybe you're like, I'm really pissed off about Jefferson Griffin. Go ahead, post it right now. Tell us that you are in, and you're going to do that on the chat. And I'm telling you, I know a lot of people said this decision's in the court's hands, but we know that judges are political creatures, which means the more that we increase the volume of attention, you don't know who's going to see that post. You don't know who's going to see that text or group chat. And if you've deleted social media, send a text. I know one of you's got a group chat. I know you got a family group chat. I know you text somebody. Maybe it's the person you're going on a date with tomorrow night. Text them. They'll know that you are politically astute and paying attention. Send it to them right now. That's what I do on my dates. So this is how we're going to continue to build the opposition. Let's go. The second thing that I want you to do is be on the lookout tomorrow morning for an email from me. You're going to get these slides. You're going to get recording. You're going to get a written summary. And what you do when you get that email is, even though all instincts may be telling you otherwise, I want you to get in touch with me. And I want you to ask me any questions that were pressing that you didn't get to tonight. And two, I want you to let us know that wherever you are in North Carolina, if you're ready to hold down an event and a rally with us. What we're going to be doing from here in the 2 or so weeks we have now between now and when we think the courts are going to make a decision, we are going to organize rallies in every major city and small town in this state. We have to show through our numbers and through our anger and our resistance that these folks, these political creatures on the court, have pissed off a whole lot of people. And they're going to be visible and they're going to be on the street. So if that is you, if you are one of those people in North Carolina who is pissed off and wants to hold this down where you live, you better respond to that email tomorrow morning. After you've, reviewed the video and all that good stuff, did your education, did your homework. I want you to say, let's go, let's throw down and get in touch with me. because the best way that we're going to be able to do this now is by getting people together all across the state. So if you are in for both the small action of making a post and you are in to hold something down where you live, I want you to put it in the chat, and I want you to let me know that you are fired up. There's a million other actions, and unfortunately we are at 7:30, but there's a lot of other things that you can do. And so if you've got to get going tonight, I understand. But Sailor, really quickly, if we can put up on the chat just another set of actions that we can take. Sailor, if you can give us just a very, very quick abridged summary of some of the other things that you can do, and rest assured you will get an email with instructions tomorrow. Sailor, please go ahead and give them just a quick summary real quick about what they can do also.
60 seconds or less, friends. Gino's right. We got to tell the story of tonight and this fight. If you were inspired, one of the 600 people who was inspired in the chat, you have to make sure you let everyone know, 10,600,000 people who did not make it tonight, that you were here. I want to say 3 names here tonight. I want to say Eileen Hanson Kelly, who wrote a piece in the Salisbury Post, Letter to a Sore Loser. I'll let you guess who that was, who wrote about her frustration. I want to talk a little bit about Dawn, who spoke with us earlier tonight, who held an event, an in-person town hall at her church when she was so frustrated because she wanted to let everybody in Craven Carteret know that this list existed and that they may be on there. These are the people who are coming together. And so as Gino says, we are going to put together events, protests, actions, just like the Raleigh protesters did, who said every name for 12 hours, just like they did in Carteret County the other day when local activists came together in the cold to say no more. This is just but a few of the ways we are going to combine earned media, as Reverend Mack was asking for, mass mobilization, statewide exposure, and concerted action. We are building a movement that demands more and better in the days, weeks, and months ahead. And this is in the midst of what everyone knows in the country is the most important piece of litigation impacting our democracy. Because if somebody can just wipe away 60,000 votes after an election, then this country is in trouble. North Carolinians like you are not naive. As Dawn said, it may seem in this corrupt system, in this newbie court, that they have created the House always wins, right? Well, it's time we remind them, as Gino always does, that this is our house, that these are our people, that these are our votes, and we cannot and will not sacrifice any of them without a fight. So friends, join us in these actions. We are building a movement together. And Gino, I want you to close us out with how people are going to get these links in the end.
So rest assured, tomorrow morning you are gonna get you're gonna get a big old email. It's gonna be big and beautiful and full of so many words, Sailor. And it's going to be a summary of everything that you got tonight, all of the links, the slides, the kitchen sink, if I can fit it in the email. It's all going to be in your email box tomorrow. So if you weren't able to grab it here or anything like that, do not worry, it'll be in your email. And remember, tonight we are making those posts anywhere where people hear us. And Brian, feel free to take off the screen share here. We are making posts wherever we know that people are reading us. And then we are also, you're responding to this email, you're calling Gino, you're texting him, you're whatever you're doing to Gino, and you are telling him that you're ready to hold it down. I see many of you are, and I'm going to hold you to that when you email me tomorrow. This is our chance, y'all. This is not only about a race in 2024, it's about what kind of state Supreme Court we're going to have in 2031 when we draw new legislative maps and decide who holds political power in this state for decades to come. I bet your bottom dollar, based off what you've seen tonight from the 1,154 people who registered for this call and will be getting this info, that it's going to be the people in this state who hold power. Because that's why we're here. That's why all these people you see on this call are here, is because we believe that better days are yet to come, and that the people in North Carolina will be vindicated. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you to our speakers for taking the time to share their stories. You will hear from us again. But in the meantime, go cozy up on the couch. Go watch something good. Hopefully it's Severance on Apple TV. And not a plug for Apple TV. I just really like Severance. And we'll be in touch with you here again soon. Thank you so much. and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, y'all.